said earlier, they came to being at peace with where they were. They came to being happy with where they were. And saying, you know what, there's nothing wrong with the place that I'm in. All of these ideas of where I should be and blah, 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 that's just ideas. There's just ideas that I've adopted that have been given. Like there's not necessarily any truth to it. Because your life is your life, and nobody can tell you what that's supposed to look like.
Right. This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles
So that you can claim your own path.
and make your life a work of art.
Another day, another podcast.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so I don't even really know what we're talking about in the sense that this one is so open. We've had such a pre-discussion about this.
Yeah.
But I think we came to some really cool points about this all, and I think ultimately it's going to lead somewhere cool. Mm-hmm. And I know that what we talked about was really valuable. I think seeing this all come together is going to be neat. Mm-hmm. But we decided to title this one, The Problem with Where You Are.
Yes.
And there's kind of some poetry to this, but you'll see it as it unfolds.
Yeah, the title is a little bit of clickbait. A little bit misleading. And I don't want to necessarily hang on to the punchline for this one. I think that it kind of is useful for us to just establish that right from the beginning, which is that the problem with where you are is in some elements that you think that there's a problem. That's part of what this is about. And I also want to just preface this one as well with where this topic kind of came from. And to give the cliff notes on this one, I had an actress reach out to me. I've never met her before, but she reached out to me because she was having some struggles. She's submitting herself for different shows and projects and this and that, but she has been having an issue getting an agent, which if you're an actor out there, or even if you're not an actor, most people know it within our society that if you're an actor, an agent is an important thing. It's an important part of the process and having a career. And so she's been having a struggle with that. And this has been expressed to me a few times from this person, and I've tried to help as best I can. However, there is a certain kind of issue that comes up around all of this, which is why we're having this conversation. And what we'll get into, we might refer back to this story a few times as we go. But it was built on this foundation of this person really wants an agent, really is desperately wanting to have an agent to a point that it is causing them a great deal of distress in their lives. And that is the thing that I really want to address in all of this thing, because there's nothing wrong with getting an agent. I want this person to have an agent. I want them to have this thing. But there was this thing that struck me about it that was saying, but in the meantime, live your life. You need to have a life. And I think this is a common thing with a lot of people who are in the arts. And the arts are, I think, in context to all of this, there's not really a whole lot different that separates somebody who goes for a life in the arts or a person who chooses to not do that. It's still people living lives and still dealing with the same struggles and problems. I feel like there's just a kind of not enhancement, but there's just something a bit more exaggerated or a little bit more brought out to the forefront when someone chooses a life in the arts that brings out some very human problems to the surface, but we just kind of get to see them a little bit more obviously. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're not as in control as an artist. It's not as much. Art is not so entangled with the industry and the economy the way that an industry job is. I mean, like, if your job is to build a house, there's a certain amount of steps that are required to complete that, to see a finished product, to be able to move on from that, for satisfaction to be met around that. With art, it's not so cut and dry. It's not so clear. And, there's many new developments, right? If you go to a new development, especially these days, you'll tend to look across the developments and you'll start to see that every house is kind of built the same. Like, they all work from a very similar blueprint. And what they do is they kind of have a general blueprint they use, and then they change that blueprint. They might mirror it on another house. They might decide to put a living room in the back and then one in the front. But what ends up happening is the basic structure of the house is almost exactly the same as the next.
Right.
And when you look at like a duplex, which is a house made for two families to live in at once, but they're attached, you start to notice that the duplexes are all kind of the same,
Right.
And so I think there's this replicatable kind of quality to material, industrial based, I should say, things like that. Whereas the arts it's not so much like that. Like, one performance that's an Oscar winner may never win another Oscar again, because what we need now is a new type of performance, and there's this constant newness and this freshness and this whole thing. And so I think if we approach the arts like that, the way one problem is solved is the way another can be solved, we end up banging our heads against the wall going like, what the heck, what am I doing wrong? I did everything I was told to do, or everything I thought was right. And it's like, it doesn't really work that way. In some ways, the reason why we're even having this way of the artist talk is that the only way to do it right is your own way. And that has to be discovered, not something you can replicate, not something you can copy. And I think, you can get into this more, but I think like with this woman struggling, same struggles I have. It's like we just get caught because we go like, well, I did everything I was supposed to do, but it's not working out. And it's challenging,
Yeah. And of course, with this young woman's struggle, it was something I could definitely relate to from my own experiences as an actor. Some of the challenges, not some of the details a little bit different, but I can relate a lot to a lot of the sentiment and the desire for opportunities and these. And as you said, there is this thing in our culture of I did all of this kind of linear thinking about things, which is just like, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. I did everything right. I went to school, I worked hard, I got good grades, I graduated, I started getting some experience here and there. I should be here. I should have this right now. And this is a lot of what we were talking about leading up into this conversation. We said, well, what's the problem at the crux of this? Because we're going to get into what a lot of the symptoms are, but what is the actual problem itself that we're dealing with? And really the issue is not being able to accept where we are in our lives. Having a resistance to where we are in our lives. And I've read it from a Dan Millman book who said that stress is resistance to what is. And I would give a thumbs up to that sentiment from my own experience of usually when I'm in some state of distress, I am resisting what's happening, the thing that is actually occurring. And when this occurs, this drums up all of our judgments and comparisons and shoulds. from our past and whatever we can. It's a very dangerous kind of path to go down, and it doesn't lead to anything good, really, for the most part. And so this young woman really just struck me with this thing where she doesn't have this agent and she's making it a huge problem. Is it a problem? Yeah, it's in some ways a problem, but it was just her feeling in her communication was so fervent, it was so urgent, it was so painful in how it was communicated. And I thought, it really doesn't have to be this painful, because within that same message, she communicated how she has been able to get herself out there for projects with big people in the industry. So there was a degree to which she said, well, there's still opportunities happening. So for one, there's a kind of lack of appreciation of what's going on there and what you're able to do there. But also, and you had mentioned this before we started, was that even if she gets the agent, there's no guarantees that come out of that. And in fact, with that can come an entirely new set of problems and challenges. And I've definitely heard a lot of them over the years that I've been in the industry. My agent, I don't trust my agent. I don't think my agent's working hard enough for me. I don't think they're submitting me for enough. I don't think they're fighting hard enough for me. All of this kind of stuff. So there's this whole brand new stress that can come with it. And especially when I see such a strong need to have one, such a strong, because that would lead to a kind of reliance, which is a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, that rapper, I don't know, more money, more problems.
More money. Oh yeah, that was
more
Biggie.
Money and more problems. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's let's stop and try that on for a sec. What is that? I mean, a lot of people believe that having money will solve their problems. Mm-hmm. I mean, they really deeply believe this. But you might actually find out that more money actually creates more problems. Mm-hmm. And getting an agent for this woman, I mean, may create more problems that are just as desperate and actually cause more anxiety, more stress, more problems essentially in her life around that, right? Because what ends up happening is, you go, well, the reason why I'm not having the career I want is because I don't have the agent. So you get the agent and then you're not getting into the auditions, or you're getting into the auditions, but they're not for big enough parts, or whatever. And so what ends up happening is you just keep chasing the next thing and going, this next thing will solve my problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that, this is where the kind of the progress part comes into it all, is like, progress is valuable, but progress as a means to solve problems is a very limiting way of looking at progress. Like, I think the thing is that, whatever problems that we have, we need to almost embrace our problems and be thankful for what they are, whatever our challenges are. I mean, everybody is going to have challenges. Everybody's going to have problems. In the scheme of things, I mean, it's a good problem to have. Your other problem could be like, I can't walk because my wheelchair, because I, broke my back, doesn't move, and I'm home alone, or whatever, like, your problems are relative to you, and so the amount of anxiety and stress we create about a problem is all very relevant to how we see ourselves. And so, like, I think there's a part of this, which is, there's a certain amount of gratitude that's necessary. Like, we need to kind of like look at where we're at and be like, okay, where I'm at is as much as I can handle at this moment. Mm-hmm. And like, if she's getting anxious about not having an agent, I wouldn't want to see her getting anxious about not getting auditions, or, the next step, the next stage of the progress, the next stage of the process. I think that I actually often think that we don't get things we want because we're not ready for them. Like if we did get what we want, they would actually lead to our own destruction. Like we can't handle them. And so in some ways, we don't progress through the problems we have until we deal with the problem we have. And it's not about solving the problem. It's more about becoming at peace with the problem. Because here's the thing. If you can become at peace with whatever problem you have, then you're more likely to be able to come to peace with a bigger problem. But if you cannot come to peace with the problem you have, other than by solving that problem, if a bigger problem comes along, you will actually be in more distress. So I think problems should be looked at not so much about being solved, but more about we should be at peace with problems. If this problem never resolves, I'm still okay kind of idea. I'm going to resolve it, but I'm okay. But she's not okay. The way, and you've told me a little bit about how she communicated, right? It's like, she's not okay. But if she became okay, like, okay, maybe I never get an agent. Can I be okay with that?
Yeah.
Because once you're okay with that, I think what ends up happening is a lot of the problem solves itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the refusal, the resistance to a problem in many ways that persists. That's why it never goes away. Because we're fighting it so hard, that it actually just kind of maintains. But the moment, you find this all the time. The moment you stop fighting something is the moment it stops fighting you back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to build off of that, part of sometimes dealing with a problem is in the understanding of the problem, which kind of becomes the solution, as opposed to trying to find an answer, which is often just a Band-Aid kind of thing that occurs. And I think that's part of what really got me to want to bring this up and kind of workshop this, if you will, which is that for this person, they think that the problem is that they don't have an agent, and perhaps that the problem is that the industry is broken. The problem is that, it's not, the industry is not as accepting or whatever of her type or whatever it is. And we could come up with all kinds of problems, which I won't even necessarily disagree that there's a reality to them whatsoever. It's like, there's a lot of things which I was hearing from them and I said, yeah, I get it. I understand. And no, it isn't fair. Like, I agree. It's not a fair system. It's not fair how a lot of this works. But it doesn't change what is, and as is the case with this person, there's just so much pain and distress going on in this one thing that they're hanging on to so tight. And I really just wanted to go, this is your life right now. Like, you are living your life right now. You're having it. Like, how much time do you want to waste being upset about this thing? And this is not necessarily going to be something that is forever, but it's about what the cards are that you have, and playing them as best you can. That's really what this was all about, because it seemed so, for me, it felt very urgent that this person kind of get on with their lives, kind of get on with it. I understand. I have compassion. I have sympathy for it, but get on with it. Don't let this one thing ruin your life. Don't let this one thing prevent you from doing something that you love and are passionate about.
Well, I also think don't hang your whole life up on one detail. I mean, I think about the other side of this, which is like, what is this building in you? it's building, obviously, resourcefulness. I mean, she was sharing about how she had submitted herself, and she got, she got attention and interest from a very big casting director in another city because of that. And she's being resourceful. If she had the agent, she wouldn't do that, resourcefulness.
Yeah.
So she's developing resourcefulness. And, I feel like if I'm not an authority on much, but if I'm an authority on anything, I might say that resourcefulness is one of those things that I might say I'm an authority on in the sense of being a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. Because, man, I never had any handouts when it came to film, man. Like, none. Mm-hmm. When I was 17, my dad said, if you move in with me instead of your mom, I'll buy you a camera and a computer so you can be a filmmaker. Well, I moved in with my dad. 3 months later, he said, you can buy your own camera and your own computer. I had to figure out how to get my hands on it. And I didn't have money. I was 17 years old. Mm-hmm. I had to figure out how to get a camera. I had to figure out how to find an editing system. Mm-hmm. Now, I can bitch and moan about how my dad did this, and it was shitty. He broke a promise, and it's not okay. But you know what? If I sit around thinking about how my dad's sabotaging my career, and if I get all caught up in that, I'm not going to do it. So I got resourceful. I started figuring out ways to get my hands on a camera, get my hands on an editing machine. I remember one day I came into work. I was working at a restaurant, and my managers noticed I was really feeling down. I was super this was right after my dad had basically said, you're going to have to figure out how to get your own shit. Mm-hmm. And they noticed, and they said, my manager, he took me outside in the back. He said, Brandon, what's going on? And I said, I was like at the brink of tears because I was like, I moved out here to the city, and, my dad said that he would help me get a camera and help me do this thing. And now he's totally saying that I can't get a camera. And I was like fucking devastated because I just didn't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And he said, there's all sorts of actors and film people, here at the restaurant. Like, we can ask them, and maybe someone can help you get a camera. And I realized, there's so many options outside of this one way in which I knew or thought I had to get a camera.
Yeah.
So, her thing, she's looking at an agent. An agent is her path to auditions and a career. But because she's not getting an agent, she has the option now to see that there's other avenues. Mm-hmm. So it's a gift. But if you look at it as a problem, if you look at it the problem, what's the title, right? The problem with where you are is that you don't see that there are options.
Yeah.
The problem is you're caught up and there's one path and one way.
Yeah.
And I mean, my entire film career, the projects I made beyond that were because of resourcefulness. So in some ways, you can look at my dad and say, what an asshole. In some ways, I still remember that. Mm-hmm. It pisses me off. But, in some ways, it was a gift. In a weird, backhanded way, it was a gift because what it ended up giving me was resourcefulness. But he didn't give that to me. He just provided an opportunity for me to give that to myself. And that's a very important thing to remember. Because you can have people say, yeah, I screwed you over and I gave you the gift. No, you screwed me over, so I gave myself the gift. Mm-hmm. And that's very important. And she could give herself the gift of resourcefulness. But right now, she's putting all her power on the agent, on one little tiny problem. And also, the agent has all the power in her life if that happens. Yeah. So the best thing I think that can happen for her is she doesn't get the agent until she develops resourcefulness, and then she can have an agent. Because if it happens any other way, it's going to shortchange her. Mm-hmm. But she's going to have to decide, do I want it bad enough? Am I willing to find it in myself? Or she's going to play a victim, and you know what? She's going to go around complaining her whole life that it just didn't work out for her, world's not fair, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the world not being fair is sometimes your best gift.
Yeah. And I mean, and part of this that you brought up in there is our expectation, which is often a big part in this. So often we find ourselves at a place in our lives and we say, it's like, this is I'm supposed to be somewhere else by this stage in time. Right. And again, for artists, artists dream big, and most artists who get into it, it's dreams of Oscars and big stages and selling out arenas and, big gallery showings and that sort of thing. And that's a wonderful that's a wonderful, beautiful thing, and it can be a fantastic motivator to get the engines going, to get that early pursuit happening. But for most artists, it hits a point where suddenly you realize, like, holy shit, this is a marathon. For most people, it's a marathon. And we do see the situations where there are the people who come out of the gate and they're running a sprint and then they just burn out.
Yeah.
And they're gone. They just disappear after a little while. And we say, whatever happened to? And they do TV shows about whatever happened to. And then you have the stories of those people who just, they kept at it. They were persistent. They felt setbacks and questioned at times what they were doing, why they were doing it. Did they still have it in them to continue on with this? And way later in their careers, something happened, and something busted wide open. Or for other people, it's they discovered that this really wasn't what they wanted. It really wasn't what they thought, and they don't have that. They have a love for it, but not that kind of love for it. And through it, still end up usually discovering a path, discovering what they were meant to do, what they do have a real passion for. They're not unrelated or unconnected things. It's just that we don't get to see what that picture is in advance. That's not the way that it works. And it more so works with us being present with our lives, being present with what is going on. And that's a lot of what this talk is about.
I think there's another thing that I'm recognizing here. There's a problem with vision that's going on because, vision's a big thing for me, and I think about it often, and I tailor a lot of my coaching and mentoring around vision. But one of the lessons that I've had to learn about vision, and I always try to impart on people, is that vision is not it's not something that you necessarily see the whole picture of. If anything, like, vision in some ways is almost not even the right way to describe it, because, like, you can only see if you're walking down a path or down a trail or going down a road, you can only see to the horizon. But, like, our dreams, our visions are usually far, far beyond the horizon. But I think we have to remember with vision is that, well, I only see to the horizon. And right now, based on what I see, I think this is what I need. But, and maybe we don't even see to the horizon. Maybe we have many obstacles in our way. So we only see, like, a very short distance. And you know what? Other things like, let's just take this analogy a little further. Let's say other things like factor in like weather and whatnot, like things that obstruct your view. So vision is one of those things where you really, at a certain point, you just have to trust that what you think you see in the future is enough to get you to where you're going, but it doesn't have to look the way you think it's going to look.
Right.
I'll go back to the story when my dad said, you have to figure out how to get your own camera. It disrupted my vision for a moment because I had this picture in my head that I would move in with my dad. He would help me get a camera and a computer, and I'd be off filmmaking. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm moving with my dad. All that part's real. And now no camera, no money to get a camera, no computer. And all of a sudden, my vision's like, this can't happen because it can't happen anymore. And that's a difficult thing. That's a difficult part of vision. But I think vision is kind of one of those things where unforeseen obstacles present themselves on your path. And vision is having the ability to see that there is some, even though you can't see past the obstacle, that you believe there's a way around it. And also that sometimes the solution is not the same as what you thought it was, meaning that, like, getting the agent doesn't solve the problem. So you can't get hung up, or it's not wise to get hung up on one thing, Resourcefulness is, I think, you're going along and then you find out you can't go the way you want it to go. And what you do is you start to find other ways. And you know what she might end up finding out, and we talked about this, she might end up finding out that if the Toronto or whatever other city decides, hey, we want to cast you in this, and all of a sudden she needs an agent, she's not going to have a problem finding an agent that wants to take 15% of what she makes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know that this is how screenwriting works, by the way? Anybody who's interested in being a screenwriter, very, very rarely do you ever get an agent before you sell a script. You actually get a script option or sale, and then you get an agent.
Right.
You have to actually, more often than not, get your first sale. And then once an agent finds out that you're up for sale, then they're willing to jump on board and help you do the legal stuff.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people, they think, and it's kind of the horse and the wagon, what comes first. And in a lot of ways, I think she's trying to go like, okay, well, the agent solves my problems. It's like, no, in many ways, you need to the agent will come along at a certain point. Go do some indie films. Go do some great performances.
Yeah.
Go do some things where if you put that in front of an agent where they went, I have to rep this person. I mean, maybe your answer is get on an indie film that wins some awards and shows how great of an actress you are.
Yeah.
And then when you're an award-winning actress, you can go into the agency and say, you need to get me out for leading roles. I mean, I took an actress in my course who never made a film before, and she won, I think, something like 20 plus, I don't know. It was 20 plus awards for one film, including Best Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Director, Best whatever. But she just decided to front end her work. She decided to take responsibility. I mean, I can say like I helped guide her, but in some ways she showed up with the willingness. That opens up doors. Now she has an option. Now she was for a little period in time, everyone was just like, have to see this film, have to meet this person.
Yeah.
Right? And then the thing is then you go down, I'll just take this a little further. You go down the road, you go, okay, well, I have to win awards with my film. Well, then you got another problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not what it's about.
Yeah, and those kinds of things, those kinds of expectations and pressures, they normally end up just strangling you.
Yeah.
They end up suffocating you, and you're not able to create with very much freedom when you kind of put that type of pressure on yourself. And usually it's our own pressure.
Yeah.
Well, we're mostly contending with.
We have to consider what do we actually control and what do we not control? Because I mean, I can talk about this story about this actress who never made a film and went off and won 20 awards and got her Best Actor awards and all of this stuff. I can talk about that. But, she didn't control that. She didn't control that she would win those awards. And when we were talking about her script, never once did we ever have a discussion about if her film would win awards or whatever.
Yeah.
It was only going through it and being as authentic and real as we could to tell her story that it turned out that she honored that authenticity. And what ended up happening is people responded to that.
Yeah.
She could control her authenticity. She could control her passion, her desire to share, her message to communicate. How people responded to that, the accolades it gets, all out of our control. And we really got to it's about territory. It's about where is your territory that's your realm of control and where are you not in control. And we got to stop trying to control things that we don't control, that are not in our territory.
Yeah. Because that creates all kinds of anxiety.
Right. But here's the thing, man, and you know this as much as I do. If you own your territory, people pay attention.
Yeah.
Right? That and the thing is if she was a filmmaker and not an actress and she was talking to me, I would say, well, what's your territory? What territory can you own? What territory can you make yours that we can see you in your zone so we can see that?
Yeah.
That's what's going to help eyeballs get on you, because that's really what you're trying to do.
Yeah. It makes me think of the law of expression as well in all of this. And
totally.
I remember seeing a little from years back. It was like a GQ article, and it was them talking about some of the best actors of our generation at the time. This was a while ago, but they actually put John C. Reilly in this list. And one of the movies that they had referenced was his performance in Magnolia, which is, you know, a lot of people know John C. Reilly for his comedy and stuff. That was kind of how he really became big. But if you haven't seen Magnolia, it's quite a movie. But his performance in it it's a dramatic one, and it's heart-wrenching what he does in that movie. And when he was asked about it, it's like, yeah, they said, well, you know, you've been doing all these kind of small parts for a long time, and now things are starting to really pick up for you. And his response was, it's like, well, I've always saw every part that I've done as being the main character in their own life, in their own story, in the context of this. And he said, I've always just tried to dedicate myself to my own little corner of the sky. Right. And I thought that was such a beautiful little sentiment. He's like, I'm dedicated to my corner of the sky in whatever I'm doing. And that's so much about what expression is, you know, for whatever our opportunities are that are present, that we do them fully, you know, and appreciate and enjoy as much as we can wherever we are, not making that wrong, not saying, oh, this part's too small, or, you know, I would rather be doing this part. It's like, well, you have this part. And we've seen what's happened to his career. He's had an incredible career and continues to have an incredible career. But he started out as a struggling actor who just committed themselves to whatever they had, whatever that was given to them and offered to them, and did a really terrific job. And people took notice of it. You know, people said, "Man, look at that guy. He's really good. Like, that was really moving. That was really funny." Like, they nailed it, and they continue to do great work, you know. And I think that comes to, you know, to a large degree, a positive attitude, you know, and not like a phony positive attitude of just being like, all right, just be thankful of this, but not really being thankful, you know, or grateful or having appreciation for what's going on. Yeah.
That's such a great reminder, especially like for me right now. That's such a great reminder because, you know, being in the film industry for like rounding almost 20 years now, it's like, man, like there's so many things that get taken for granted and I forget, you know, and that story about owning your little corner of the sky, you know, like taking that, I mean, I'm thinking about that in my own life and I'm going, man, some places I'm not doing that. You know, it just kind of was a little bit of me kind of recognizing, because I remember when I was just starting, and I remember, you know, getting my first few roles in television and in commercials and things, and how meaningful and important that was. And, you know, I think what ends up happening is you do bigger roles and you move on and make bigger pictures and whatnot. And what happens is there's a kind of like a expectation that it always needs to be this big thing. And, you know, when I stop and I really kind of let myself appreciate a role, I realize that sometimes it's not a small role. I'm just being a small actor. And it's a really good reminder for me, you know, because I think also, you know, you mentioned that, like, especially being in the arts, but being in the film industry in particular, it definitely is a marathon. And, you know, there's certain times where it's going to be lean years. It's going to be times where it's not like everything isn't just like pumping at all cylinders and it's not just all working. And, you know, you might be going for smaller parts or doing smaller gigs or, you know, whatever. You know, I mean, I went from directing a television show to directing music videos. I mean, it's not because I'm better than I ever was, but it's just like what was available, you know, what was available for a directing job, what was available, you know. Also, the industry changed. I mean, basically, you know, I remember, and this, I'll just share this because, you know, this is part of my journey, but I remember being this, you know, when I was younger as an indie filmmaker, and we were all so excited. Because we were like, digital film is coming in, and anybody can make a film. Yeah. And then Netflix came around, and it's like so much more content can get out there. And then what ended up happening was a repercussion that we didn't expect, was that movie stars would start becoming television stars. But before that, there were movie stars and television stars.
Yeah.
They were different. And the movie star was a higher caliber considered in the industry.
Yeah.
Now, you might even say that being a television star in some ways is the way to go, because there's more money, there's more of a chance to build a relationship with your audience. There's all sorts of things. But
there's less of a stigma now, too, of making that. It used to be a really big stigma of television stars going to, like, movies. It was almost unheard of. There was only a few people who made that transition. And now,
and if you went back from movies to television, it was like death in your career.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it used to be.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I mean, this is maybe partly why I bring this up, is that we think that solving one problem solves the problem. We don't realize that solving that problem sometimes creates other problems and sometimes greater problems that we didn't foresee. You know, Alan Watts talks about this all the time. You know, what's that story about how we used DET? DET.
Yeah, it was a pesticide that they used back in the day to like help the crops kill bugs and stuff like that, and it was supposed to, you know, improve everyone's lives. Crop yields would be much greater and all of this stuff. And then it started just wiping out bird populations. Started out with a good intention, started out with, you know, a good idea in mind, but it ended up creating a massive problem, and they had to stop using it.
It also started causing cancer or something like that, too.
Yeah, there was all kinds of issues with it. I don't know all of them. I know that I think one of the major ones, though, was that it was wiping out bird populations.
Right.
It was just severely toxic to birds, and I guess in that way it would probably also have massive toxic effects to people as well.
Well, I mean, that's, you know, I think that, you know, part of the thing is that the solution that we think is the way is sometimes the problem, a greater problem than the problem itself. I had a business coach for a little bit, and when I just started my business, I remember boasting. I'm like, I could sell ice cubes to Eskimos and all of this, you know. And
I don't think that's very PC anymore.
Yeah, but he pointed out to me. He said, "Well," he's like, "maybe that was so maybe that's true," because I was selling a lot. I mean, it was like every single day sales, just sale. I was having rooms of people sign up for my courses, and he pointed out. He said, "Well, you know, would you want to take money from, say, like an old woman, knowing that she wouldn't be able to eat, but you would make that money? Would you want to do that, knowing that she didn't really need what you had to offer her or something?" And he used this, and I said, "No, I wouldn't want to do that." He goes, "You should be careful. Consider being careful about this comment you're saying, that you could sell something to someone they don't even need." And that hit me, and I don't really think I was, but it really made me put into check. You know, do I want to be the kind of person that does that? And, you know, here's the thing. I have personal goals. I want to make money. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to do things for myself. But at what cost? And that really made me reevaluate. And my entire enrollment process altered in a way which was really good. And I shared this on another podcast. But I qualify people now. Now I look at people, I go, you cannot even be in my course unless we figure out that you actually need it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, I'm giving you your papers. You can go. You know what I mean? Like, there's like this call, this conversation. If it's not a fit, I'm so quick to like kick people out.
Yeah. And
the thing is, when it's happening, is they have to confront, is this what they actually want? And this gives me a certain amount of peace, you know. And I've been working through this and figuring out better ways to do that. But, you know, I think sometimes we need to look at what we want, and we need to consider that it's not just about us. It's not just about what we want. I mean, you know, here's another thing. Let's just say that, you know, she wants an agent, right? This actress wants an agent, and the agent can only take on so many people. And there's another actor out there who also wants an agent, right? Of course there is. So if she gets that spot, that other person loses the spot.
Yeah.
Now, we might not care about this other person. We might just be like, me. But when you get a spot, when you get an opportunity, are you even going to be grateful for the fact that you took a spot on that bench, on that team, on that place? That's something that we need to consider, because I think there's a lot of people who they're like, I want, and I don't care the effects as long as I get what I want. And in some ways, I think the universe goes, believe what you will, think of it as you will, but I think there's a balance that ends up happening. And where things don't happen for people when they are not factoring in the fact that their lack of gratitude. Like, you talk to just about any spiritual coach, talk to any, all my mentors, any mentor I've ever met, at the end of the day, it's always gratitude. If you're not grateful, a well of problems will occur in your life. And I think that gratitude is this, I get caught in it all the time. But gratitude is one of those things. I'm going to share one more story just to finish this point off. I was just talking to a friend. She shared with me that she had not been mobile, and things had kind of been really difficult on her, because she ended up getting like a sickness that gets into your blood. And what it does is it shuts down your joints, and you can actually die from it. Ooh. And she had recovered, and she was kind of saying, I'm so grateful to have my health. And we were just talking about that, and she really helped me to realize, is like, how often do I just take for granted the fact that I'm healthy, the fact that I have my limbs, the fact that I can, whatever, just, and there's things we can always appreciate. But I think what happens is we have problems, and without the gratitude of what we do have, and keep going for more, I need this, I need that, we never learn the lessons of gratitude. And I think gratitude is such an important point before you solve a problem. You need that gratitude, because if you don't have it, and then problems become greater, and you keep reaching and reaching and reaching, there is a point where you might basically like reach, and then you lose something, and you realize, man, I had it so good, but I never saw it when I had it that good. Mm-hmm. That's why you got to learn gratitude before it gets as good as it can get. That's why I think it's important to get gratitude right now, no matter where you're at.
Yeah, gratitude and humility. Yeah, to a certain degree there as well.
I think there's this. I struggle with this all the time. And I get caught in this. I think it's just our societal programming, but I really do at times believe that if I get this thing or do this thing, that it's going to make everything okay. Yeah. And it's such a weird little mind fuck, because it's like, it's not, everything is okay. But like, my obsession with needing this thing to be okay is my disconnect from the fact that it is all good right now. And I think your point was really like, and the struggle, and the reason why you shared this story was that you had this woman, and she's not enjoying her life right now because it's all about getting that agent, you know? And then she believes, okay, well, and I get the agent, I'll enjoy my life. But we've been in this long enough that that's not going to solve it. You're going to get the agent that might feel good for a little bit, and pretty soon you're going to be in the exact same place you were.
Yeah, there'll be something else to be discontented about. Yeah. Because it's this never-ending game that we play with ourselves that there's no winning. No. There's no winning at this game. That's the thing when we get caught in this one. And someone that not so much anymore, but someone who I still appreciate that we used to reference a little bit was Frank Kern, who's one of these he was one of the original internet business gurus, but now he's more of like a motivational speaker, I guess, than he is necessarily like a...
Well, he still runs an online marketing business, but yeah, he's become a celebrity in the world. So yeah, as a speaker, he advises a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And he shared in this one talk that he did of when he started some of his first companies that really took off, and suddenly he had all of the money that he had dreamed of having. He had the house, and he had, he had every car that there was. He had a Porsche and a Ferrari, and then, he got rid of those. He had a Lamborghini and he got rid of those. He was getting these momentary things, but was just never happy. And in fact, his unhappiness grew worse.
Yeah.
It got worse and worse. He had more than he'd ever had. He had everything he dreamed of, and he was never more miserable in his entire life. And it caused him to reevaluate some things, and there's a degree to which when we hear stories like that, we go, yeah, but still you got to have your millions and blah, blah, blah. And so it was only because you still got your millions that you were able to do it. And it's like, no, that's an absolute fallacy, because I feel like for as many stories as there are like that, there are stories of people who were down on their luck, had next to nothing, things were not working out for them, and then they, as you said earlier, they came to being at peace with where they were. They came to being happy with where they were, and saying, you know what, there's nothing wrong with the place that I'm in. All of these ideas of where I should be and blah, 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 that's just ideas. They're just ideas that I've adopted, that have been given. Like there's not necessarily any truth to it, because your life is your life, and nobody can tell you what that's supposed to look like.
Right.
Your life is the life that it is right now. That's what it is. And we can choose to be fully a part of it, and in many ways celebrate our lives as it is. That is always available to us. Getting a little sidetracked. So there's been people who have been in that place of being down on the luck, and then come to a place of recognizing that that their lives are already kind of wonderful as it is, and that they don't need this thing to be happy. And then that's when something happens, and they get that sort of that big vision that they'd always dreamed of. So it works both ways, but there's a commonality where there's still something that has to be confronted, that exists within so much of our society, so much of our programming and how we think about things, that is really important to address. And that's some of what we're trying to address on this episode, and what we've been trying to address in a lot of other episodes as well, is, what are these things that get in the way of us leading and living full creative lives, that have a sense of well-being and joy to them, despite everything that's going on. How do we find that? How do we do that in our lives? And I think that's what we try and talk about on this show. That's what we're trying to somehow speak of. Not that there's an answer to these things, but that we need to really look at these things. There's a quote that I saw a little while ago, and it was saying, maybe you should doubt your doubts. And I thought that was there's something really beautiful about that. Like we're full of doubts, we're full of these fears, and we give ourselves all kinds of reasons as to why we should buy into that story, or these fear stories. Whether that's protection, survival, we need to defend ourselves, and all it does is enforce a really fatalistic view of the world and view of our lives. So in this whole thing of this young woman, this actress who has this major crisis in their life that they don't have an agent. I mean, I think it speaks to something that we all deal with to a certain degree, which is looking at something that we don't have.
Yeah. You can relate to this in anything. I mean, it could be, I don't have a girlfriend, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have a job, I don't have a thing, right?
I don't have, here in Vancouver with the cost of living, there's people who are like, oh, you know, I have some friends, they live in like this beautiful giant like 3-bedroom apartment. And they're like, oh, sometimes they're like, oh, we don't have a house. And I mean, it's like and here in Vancouver, it's like it's insanely expensive for a house. But I mean, you know, there's always these things that are sometimes in operation that it's like, I don't have this thing and my life isn't good because I don't have it. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, who says your life isn't good?
Yeah. Well, you know, things don't always work out the way you think they're going to work out. That's part of life, you know, and life is, it's an adventure, man. I mean, you know, and how much you're willing to embrace the adventure is, I think, how much you're going to enjoy this ride. There's a quote, and I believe it's from the Tao Te Ching, which I just read, which was, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath your feet." Which I love that quote. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. I mean, that's the whole point of this talk, is that, you know, wherever you want to go, it starts right here. You are where you are. I mean, and, you know, the thing is like, if it was as simple as walk 1,000 miles and you will achieve your dreams, everybody would achieve their dreams. But it's like, walk 1,000 miles, but over cliffs, through valleys, past lava, you know, through rain and storms and winter, without food, through deserts. You know, life has a variety of things that you're going to experience. I mean,
and after 1,000 miles, there'll be another 1,000 miles.
Exactly. You know, it's like, the other thing too is that there's even a destination other than the one you're at right now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, I look back in my life, you know, thus far. I look back and I think, man, what were some incredible experiences along the way? And a lot of time I remember thinking, well, when I get here, then then it'll be good. But, you know, I look back and I look back and I go, there were some great experiences that I had. And, you know, I think the wisdom or the lesson that I really learned was like, you know, life goes on, you know, life passes by. You got to enjoy the moment you're in. You really just got to enjoy it, because otherwise you end up looking back at your life going, man, I should have enjoyed that more. I could have enjoyed that more.
Yeah. I can't remember who it was. There was, I got to get better at remembering things. I just hear these anecdotes and then I'm like, I don't know who said this or who they said it to, but there was,
I don't know who said it or who they said it to.
Yeah. There was a famous female figure from the 20th century.
Okay.
Tell you that much. And she was asked if you got to live your life over again, what would you change, or what would you do differently? And she said, I wouldn't change a thing. I just would have paid more attention. And I remember when I first read that, and I was just like, that's a nice thought, you know, like, but as time has gone by, I just go, holy shit. That is like, it's just so, I find that to be so beautiful and so profound in its wisdom that I really take that more and more to heart, because we think we have these ideas of what a great moment is, you know, and sometimes our media is default for that. You know, it sells us these ideas of triumph and greatness and whatever. And, you know, so we have this filter, this kind of judgment that we place on our lives and what has happened and where we are right now. And then at the same time, I find myself at moments looking back at events in my life and just going, wow, I remember when I stood out on that dock on this lake with my friends. Nobody knew that we were there except for us, and it was fucking magnificent. Like, it's burned in my memory. It was more beautiful than anything I've ever seen in a movie, or anything, like, and I look, man, my life is full of these extraordinary, intimate human moments, and I go, holy shit, those are mine. Those are mine. Those are nobody aside from maybe the other people who were there, but those are mine. My experience of it, that's mine. Nobody else has that except for me. And how can you have any kind of, from that context, I'm like, how can I have any judgment over what's good and what isn't in my life? I just wish I'd paid more attention to it, right? To some of these things, just being like, and it just makes me want to go, let me pay more attention to my life right now, to what is so amazing about my life right now, instead of wasting energy and wasting time thinking about some idea of where I thought my life was going to be, or what I thought it was going to look like,
or what you think it should be.
What I think it should be. He's like, what is that even? What is that even?
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of ideas. And those ideas are never, ever as profound as what is actually happening. And this is something I teach actors in the process that I take them through. It's just like, be here right now. Explore what's happening in this moment with this other person in this scene, and what's going on right now, because that is so much more interesting, especially when you're really interested in what's happening. If you're really present, it is so much more fascinating than any idea that you came in with or could possibly come in with. Always, 100% of the time, it is always more interesting. Is always more captivating. It always carries with it so much more beauty in it than putting some idea of what you think is beautiful into it.
I think that's the counterintuitive part of this conversation in a lot of ways, which is that it's in the being present, it's in the being and paying attention that incredible things occur. And, in a lot of ways, the problems we think we have are all solved by simply being present, by simply being right here, right now. Like, the 1,000-mile journey, begins beneath your feet. I remember being in my 20s and making this project. And I remember waking up one morning and I had not slept, or I actually didn't wake up. I just remember the morning and everybody showed up. And what I had done is laid out everybody's costume on a chair. And I'd put everything there, and, I had the whole day set for shooting. And people walked in and they were just, and we went off, and it poured torrential rain during the shoot. And we were outside the whole time. And, at that time I was making this movie, and I was doing this, and it was all leading up to making eventually, which became this 120 plus person show with hundreds of thousands of dollars put into it. And, all this, but that was an incredible moment. There's so many incredible moments that day.
Mm-hmm.
And, we shot this scene. I'll just share this because these are just moments, right? But we shot this scene, and it's where myself, and I was acting in the scene, and another character, and we are standing by a fire, and we're talking about what it meant, what life was like essentially for us. We were just opening. We were a couple soldiers, but we were opening up about some things about our fathers and some things about life. And the fucking ocean came in so much that it flooded out our fire.
The tide rolled in.
And the beach, we ran out of time. And, the torrential rainstorm had just stopped.
Right.
But then we had the ocean coming in. Like, everything was going wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we were getting through this shoot. And, it's funny because I look back, because we captured this footage, but we ended up reshooting that scene later. We never used this scene. But I looked back at the footage of us talking. And it was like some of the most authentic acting that I had ever done because we were just in the moment doing it, And I think like there's this kind of like idea that somehow it's going to get better than that. And like when I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to be remembering those days. But in my head, I remember like, I did love that shoot. Don't get me wrong. But I remember so much of just always being like, at that time in my life, just always being like, but when I get here, when this happens, then it's going to be, and yeah, I think that's the thing. We end up missing the life that's happening right now. And, there was so many struggles going on. And you could focus on those problems and focus how everything's going against you and focus how the world is not working out the way you want it to work. Or you could be in the moment and be like, I'm doing what I fucking love right now. I'm doing what I fucking love with all my friends around me, and we're making something that everybody said was impossible, and we're doing it, And we're just here, and we're doing what we set out to do. And that can be your everything. And I think the thing is I'm going to just share another story because I feel this is really important. Just a few years previous to that, one of my closest friends, George, he and I were going to make a show together. 21 years old, he got T-boned. Him and another girl, they got T-boned instantly, dead. And he and I had all these dreams about all these times we would go and make movies and do all this stuff. And there's a part of me at any time I'm on set and I'm making a movie, I always think of him because I think like, as sad as it makes me that he's not here with me, he's given me this appreciation for film and this appreciation to be alive, to be able to do it, because he never got that chance. And it was his dream, And I think about how quickly life can just be gone. And so like you're in this moment, your problems that you have, all this future shit, all this stuff you have to solve. You could be dead and it might never happen. You got to be alive now, And I think that's what I'm really kind of taking away from this talk. It's a reminder. And that territory, like that part of the sky that's yours, you got to own that shit because while it's here. And you just got to own the shit out of your corner of the sky. And even if nobody's paying attention to you and nobody seems to care, it's your little bit of life that you get to live right now. And there's no guarantee that you're going to even get to live into the future that you're projecting. I'm not saying don't have a future, but if you can enjoy right now, walking into that future is going to be a lot better. So, that's something I'm really like, I'm going to walk away with that from this conversation because it really is reminding me, that just that mention you pointed out about there's like the small character, but like owning that corner of the sky. Fuck, man. That is so important. And I can get distracted about, I think we all can. But that's why we need to have these conversations, right? Mm-hmm. We need to stop needing to be somewhere other than where we are, And yeah, times get shitty. Not every moment is the best moment of your life, but it's the moment you're in, and you can work from that moment. And it's what you got right now, and and if anything about life has taught me anything, everything passes. The hard moments and the great moments, they pass. So, even if you're in a hard moment, take solace in the fact that this too shall pass. But even if you're in a great moment, take concern that this too shall pass, you know, because there will be a day where that is not anymore, you know, and it's like honoring your own death, you know what I mean? Like to recognize that this is a once in a lifetime moment you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's really about, in some ways, enjoying all of it to some extent.
As much as you can.
As much as you can.
And you know, when you're not enjoying it, I think that can be okay. You know, I don't think everything has to be like I don't think everything has to be this kind of need to be happy all the time and joyful and fulfilled. Yeah. You know, like sometimes you can have moments of real sadness and anger and frustration and just to allow that to be a part of this journey, you know? It doesn't have to be the best, it doesn't have to be great, but it's just a part of it, and it gives context to the great moments.
Well, I mean, in a strange, because I think that in acting is kind of a unique type of art form. Every art form has its own kind of peculiarities to it. Like they're very similar, but some of them have their own kind of unique take on things. And acting is one that gives us some interesting glimpses into some potential, I don't know, truths or realities. Because I know that I've done performances where I'm going in to a scene, playing some part where I'm going through some sort of terrible thing, some sort of awful thing, you know, like you just running the gamut of just being, you know, betrayed or just so profoundly sad and sorrowful, or, you know, it's any number of these things, and going on and really fully experiencing these emotions like they're really happening, like I've got tears coming and they're real fucking tears. And while that's all going on, underneath it being like, this is so much fun.
And you know, I think like sometimes it's only actors that get that. You know, like I think that's one of those things where like when you've really done that as an actor, you understand that joy pain. You really get that, because like an actor is like one of those rare professions where you're called upon to bring up trauma and fucking love what you do at the same time. Like, it's profound that way. Yeah. And not everybody, like I forget sometimes that not everybody gets to experience that, you know? Like they might in other ways, but like we call upon that. Like we try to call upon that. It's such a fascinating
and have an experience of these different emotions.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I think that if you're doing it right, you're having a good time.
Yeah.
Because I know that's when I've always done my best work. It's just like, whoa, this is some intense shit going on right now. But man, like I'm on a ride right now. This is exhilarating. And I feel like that can be something that we bring into our own lives. Not to be like masochists or anything, you know, like not like we're like just loving punishment. But there's a kind of recognition of the moments of our lives and these moments that occur, and saying, wow, I feel so alive. You know, this is happening, but also not taking it so seriously. Because I think that that's part of what the acting thing brings to it, which is that we know it's play. You know, like we know that this isn't for real.
Yeah.
And so we kind of allow ourselves a type of enjoyment in it. And there's perhaps a way that we can do that in our lives, where we can say, hey, this is just a play. You know, this is all for fun, really. And we might be able to have a new take on our experiences, on the challenges that we face and we confront, and the emotions that we feel, and just have a different kind of relationship with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good points.
Yeah, well, we could continue on and on, but let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap this one up. So This beer, I'm actually liking it, man.
Me too. I didn't know what I was gonna think of this one, but I've been really enjoying this one. Surprising, like it's a sipping beer for sure. Like this is not a beer that you just put down, like you just put a bunch of these back, but I could definitely do a couple glasses of these for sure.
Yeah. No, it's been nice. It's got a nice aroma, a nice flavor. It's definitely, I agree, definitely a sipping beer. But
yeah, it's
just very flavorful, and it's very like full. I guess is the best way to put it. But it's been a nice one. I mean, it's been an enjoyable beer to have as the conversation goes on.
And this one is, and I just want to again note, we're not sponsored by these people. We just drink beer to fuel the conversation as part of our sort of origins and traditions here. And this one is from Vancouver Island Brewing since 1984. And this is called the Misthorn Winter IPA. So it's got the IPA. So if anybody's familiar with that, they're stronger. They're kind of very, have a lot of citrus, floral kind of things going on in it. But this has this winter element to it. So it says on your rye spice, cinnamon, and orange. And I can definitely taste all of those things in there. And I've got to say, this has been a really good one. I've been enjoying all of this.
Yeah, big fan. Let's spurt on some good talk. Okay, well, final points.
After my last rant, I don't know if I have much else to say on this one. Just the reminder that to where this all began was about. This was a story about somebody who wanted their life to be somewhere else than it was at its core. And to me, it presented a glimpse into something I think we can all relate to. We can all relate to wishing something was different in our lives, wishing there was some part of our lives that was working out, and we feel as if, or think as if that was different, our lives would be so much better, so much changed. And not to say that these aren't worthy pursuits. I don't want to put any kind of judgment on that level, but really for me, this was just a reminder of, look, where you are right now is terrific. Where you are right now is amazing. And don't let this idea, because after all, it's just an idea, because you don't actually know that that's going to make anything any better or any different, whatever. You don't know that. And as we've explored, oftentimes we get things that we want, and it only just creates new problems or bigger problems. So this was so much about really just becoming present to our lives, to becoming so much more engaged with our lives the way it is now, and appreciating that we're here, and there's beauty all around us, available to us all the time, opportunity all the time for something extraordinary if we're paying attention. And to me, that's what this talk was really about, and what it really stirred up for me.
I didn't know what we were going to get into really in this conversation, but usually I find that I have some idea, most of the time, what we're kind of going to cover and where we're going to direct it. So this one's been kind of a bit of a journey for me, just to kind of have it unfold. And, you brought that awareness, just sharing some stories brought some awareness to me about, really kind of embracing the corner of the sky that's mine, the owning my territory. That's the way I phrased it originally. But seeing that that's such an important part of just going through life, that I am where I am, and the best I can do in moving forward and making progress and getting what I want is to really just own where I'm at, so that as I go, it in some ways the work is done for me by being present, by loving the moment and loving and living this moment. Because through living and loving this moment fully, a lot of the problems are solved for me. And I think the thing I would leave people with, which is my kind of awareness from this talk, is that you don't need to motivate yourself out of the lack. You could motivate yourself out of the excitement. And I think that's the thing that I'm recognizing is that, when I'm motivating myself out of lack, I really do sometimes convince myself that the wanting of it, the desire for it, the need for it is what motivates me. But when I really check in, it's actually not really what motivates me. That's more what scares me. What actually motivates me is the excitement, wouldn't it be cool if we went and did this? Wouldn't it be like, what could happen if this happened? You know what I mean? And so there's this kind of more of a curiosity and a wonder and a kind of looking forward to. And I think about, when I've achieved anything in my life, most of it has not really come from the lack. It's usually come from a kind of like, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? Wouldn't it be fun? It's more like a childlike kind of like, oh, let's try this almost. You know what I mean? It's not like there's not like an incomplete part of it. Like I think about when we made the film. I mean, even when people were telling me it was impossible, I remember just like not even hearing that and just being like, but it would be so cool if we did it. Like that was all that was really going on. And it wasn't really so much, I don't really remember it being like, I need to do this to like make my career, as much as it was like, this would be so much fun. And I think we can motivate ourselves from a place of like joy and fun and excitement, as opposed to this kind of, I think we have faulty programming. Whenever we're motivating ourselves from lack, that's not only is that a painful place to motivate yourself from, but I think it's the actual thing that actually makes it a lot harder to get stuff. And I think with this conversation, I think the last thing I'll leave everybody with is this is not easy work. Being in the moment, being present, having everything be enough and you be okay. This is going to come and go. You're going to have moments where this works for you and moments where you're like, I'm so frustrated. I'm so in trouble. I mean, but just look at it as a discipline, as a practice, something you can kind of like refer to and go back to. And don't beat yourself up if you're not 100% with it all the time. It's, this is a work in progress. And I know this because I've been doing this for a long time and I slip out of the moment so easily at times. But I think if I can say there's any victory for me at this point, is I'm more in the moment now than I've ever been. And that's a win for me, and hopefully as life continues, I will be more and more in the moment and more at peace with the moment. And that's what I would impart to anybody is practice that.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you got something out of this, if you feel it improved your life or your journey in any way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode.
You can also support us on Patreon, where we have tons of great bonuses. You are the ones that make the show possible and help us to thrive. Thank you for joining us.